Hello everyone and welcome to the Winecast. Just a quick supplement to the earlier Burgundy cast. Having a look in this particular case at Burgundy wine labels so we can identify the different tiers of the quality classification by looking at the label. If you haven't already checked out the Burgundy cast, you might want to do that now, as this cast may not make a tremendous amount of sense unless you have some prior knowledge about Burgundy without looking at that cast first. All right, let's just go ahead and get started. So at the top of the quality classification in Burgundy is Grand Cru, and here we have a couple of Grand Crus. And they're pretty easy to spot. You're just going to look for the phrase Grand Cru, which you can see here, and here, right on the label. And you're not going to have any trouble finding that in relatively recent vintages. Earlier vintages didn't have to include it, and some producers did and some producers didn't. And that led to some confusion, especially with village-level wines, as we'll look at that toward the end of the cast, why that was the case. Now, what else is on this label? Well, the name of the specific Grand Cru vineyard where all the grapes came from, in this case, Romanée Vivant, and here, Crieux-Batard Montrachet. The bottle on the left is a red Burgundy, so Pinot Noir, and the bottle on the right is a white Burgundy Chardonnay. Also, each of these vineyards is not only a named Grand Cru vineyard, but it's an AOC, or controlled appellation, to itself. So here you can see that the AOC designation for this wine is the Romanée Vivant vineyard, and though it doesn't use the name of the vineyard again, it simply implies that Crieux-Batard Montrachet is the AOC for this wine. So each of the Grand Cru vineyards is its own AOC. All right, let's take a look at the next category, which is Premier Cru. So a step down theoretically from Grand Cru, Premier Cru is easy to spot as well because you are almost always going to see the phrase Premier Cru. And you will also see the name of the village that the Premier Cru vineyard is in. And then normally you will also see the name of the vineyard. Sometimes in quotation marks, sometimes not. So both of these are named Premier Cru vineyards, each in their respective villages. In this case, this one's a white Burgundy. This one is a red Burgundy. Producer didn't have to tell you that on the label. What about the appellation, or the AOC? Well, as we talked about in the cast, Premier Cru vineyards are not their own appellation. They get their appellation status from the village that they're in. So this is part of the village appellation Nuit Saint-Georges. But so that there's no confusion, you get an additional Premier Cru Contrôlé phrase added to indicate that this isn't just a village level wine, it's a Premier Cru. And you see the same thing going on here, where the appellation is the name of the village. Now, the next tier down are village level wines. And for village level wines, all that you're going to see is the name of the village, Moret-Saint-Denis, and over here, Vosne Romanée. The producer may specify the vineyard, that if it was a single vineyard, that the grapes came from. In this case, this producer did. This is a village level vineyard in Vosne Romanée, but the producer does not have to do that. You won't always see individual vineyard names the way that you will tend to in Premier Cru and definitely in Grand Cru. And then the appellation is just the village. The villages are their own appellation. And the tier below village is the regional appellation. There are 23 possible regional appellations covering a number of different things, but the most important is the general Burgundy, or Bourgogne in French, appellation. So what you're going to see there is the word Bourgogne, Burgundy. Often you'll see a varietal specified, in this case Pinot Noir, in this case Chardonnay. And you'll see that the appellation is the general AOC Bourgogne, or AOC Burgundy. And you can see that in both cases. In both cases, it's the same whether or not this was a white or a red wine. Both of them have the same general appellation of Burgundy. One of the other important regional appellations that you might come across is Bourgogne Oligo Tay. This is, again, another general appellation for all over Burgundy, so the grapes for this wine could be sourced from all over Burgundy, like they were in the previous two wines. And the AOC is a specific one for producing wine made from Oligo Tay. But otherwise, it's just as general as the general Burgundy AOC. Now, one last thing to look at. So on the left, we have a Grand Cru from the Criobat Montrachet vineyard. And on the right, we have a village-level wine from the village of Chassange-Montrachet. It's pretty obvious which of these is a Grand Cru and which isn't, if only because the phrase Grand Cru is clearly visible on the bottle on the left side of the screen. But if I were to obscure that phrase, or otherwise remove it, you can see that because the names are very similar to each other, there could be some confusion as to which of these is the Grand Cru and which of these is the village-level wine, unless a consumer had some prior knowledge about the significance of each of these names. The reason for this is that villages in Burgundy figured out some time ago that they could attach the name of a significant vineyard in their village. In this case, the village of Chassange attached the name of the Montrachet vineyard to its own name to give them a sort of prestige bump by suggesting that even though this particular wine doesn't have any grapes from the Montrachet vineyard, it's grown in an area that does have an important Grand Cru vineyard in it. So this helps sort of bump up the prestige of village-level wines for villages that were lucky enough to have Grand Cru vineyards within them. But it did lead to a lot of confusion, especially in older vintages, when producers were not required to put the phrase Grand Cru on the label. So it still pays to familiarize yourself with the names of the Grand Cru vineyards or the names of the villages, or both, in order to help keep straight which is which, especially if you're looking at bottles from earlier vintages. If you do find yourself struggling to identify the difference between an older Grand Cru and a village-level wine, one reliable guide still is price. And you can see a pretty big differential between the cost of the Grand Cru on the left and that of the village-level wine on the right, which is interesting because both of these wines come from the same general area of Burgundy. But the difference in price is very closely correlated to the fact that the grapes for one of these wines came from a designated Grand Cru vineyard site, whereas the other one came from village-level vineyard sites. Just something to think about. Thanks again for joining me for another Winecast. I hope this has been informative and interesting for you. If it has, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm your host, the Unknown Winecaster, and I'm out. Enjoy the grape, but always enjoy it responsibly.